Hey everybody, welcome back to Good Vibes Gaming. It's the holiday season, and we're all having a jolly good time. I hope you are. If you don't celebrate, I hope you're at least taking some time off, getting some rest, drinking some juice, if you like juice, and cozying up with a fun video game, of course. Speaking of video games, it's a gaming channel. We've played a lot of video games this year, and if you know me, I like to stay very well-rounded, play a lot of games if I can, and I'd like to think that I did that this year. And because of that, picking my top 3 games has been kind of difficult. It's never easy because I don't like saying this game is better than that game, or, you know, it's all apples and oranges. If you like a game, the game's good. It's simple as that, in my book. But there are games that do stand out to me more, that I think about longer, or that I go back to play more often than I do others. And so the way that I thought about this list was games that stuck with me, games that I had to think about a lot, or that gave me that gamer brain rot. And I think I landed on 3 games that resonated with me, games that I spent a lot of time thinking about either after I beat, or even months later, and in some cases, many months later. My favorite games probably aren't your favorite games, and if you do have a favorite game that I don't mention here, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And just because I don't say a game that you like, or I say a game that you don't like, we're all friends here. You know, gaming is subjective, so no hard feelings either way, and I hope we can have some fun. So to start things out, I want to talk about a game that, honestly, I didn't really know was coming out until it did, and invoked feelings I haven't felt for a very long time. And that game is Tunic. You play as a fox in a green tunic, wielding a sword and a little bitty shield. And if that sounds familiar, well, it's supposed to. This game is kind of modeled after The Legend of Zelda on NES, and it goes pretty deep, because not only do you look like Link and you play like Link and you're in a world like Hyrule, you're also given an instruction manual. The game's perspective is that you are playing the game. At least, that's how I understand it. Apparently the lore gets quite deep. I don't want to get into that. I want you to experience that for yourself. You're given just a few pages of an instruction manual that tell you how to play the game, and also solve some of its puzzles. It tells you what your end goal is, but not all the pages are there. So you're missing out on important pieces of context. So the basic idea of the game progression is that you will find the pages of the instruction book that will then reveal necessary information to you on how to play the game. There will be some abilities you have that you just don't know you have until you find the manual. There's lots of elements like that. Not only is it cool and a great gameplay mechanic, but also the instruction booklet just invokes The Legend of Zelda NES. The artwork, how it tells you the information, it's just magnificent. It's magical even. Exploring this game and uncovering all of its secrets, it's honestly hard to explain. It's like I haven't had that kind of feeling since I played Ocarina of Time on the N64 for the first time. It reminds me of an age where the information isn't so readily available, like there's no internet. Of course you could use the internet to look up the information to solve the puzzles or play through Tunic, but you'd really be robbing yourself of the experience, because the experience is obtaining the knowledge. The knowledge is the gameplay. If you just look it up, you've basically, one, wasted your money, and wasted what would have otherwise been a very, very powerful experience. The game's really pretty. It uses this tilt-shift look with these kind of low-poly characters. It actually, in terms of combat, it uses a similar system to Dark Souls, where you have these save points that you can register to, that if you die, you'll respawn there. You'll also be able to refill your health potions, level up. It basically is beat for beat, the Dark Souls method. And I'm not saying that for the old cliche, this is a Souls-like, because it's really not. It just uses that as the backbone to a much different experience. And I think it pairs together well, because when you look at the classic Legend of Zelda games, they're typically not very challenging from a combat perspective. So the team here said, well, what if we made this kind of mystical, surreal experience and adventure, but also backed it by challenging combat? And I think that even services the narrative more, because it is a difficult world to experience because of that combat. So it makes it harder to uncover its secrets, because you have this wall that you have to overcome in order to do that. It makes finding those secrets even more satisfying because of the trials and tribulations you had to go through to get there. And I think that's just incredible. If you haven't played Tunic, I highly advise you not look anything up. Pretty sure it's still on Game Pass. I think it also recently came to Switch. So there's a lot of ways to play it. Play it at your own pace. Really spend the time to figure out the game's world and its puzzles. I implore you. Trust me, it is worth the effort. All right, and that takes me to my second game. And that game is Pokemon Legends Arceus, or Arceus. I don't know. It's Arceus in Japanese, so we're gonna go with that. Pokemon Legends Arceus is the game I always wanted growing up. As a kid, I wanted to be a Pokemon trainer. I wanted to be a Pokemon master. I wanted to have my own Pikachu. I was ready to go out on my own journey once I hit 10 years old, you know? And I'm sure a lot of you were like that. And you could get that experience from the Game Boy games. You do get to go out in the world on your own. You get to catch Pokemon, you get to go for the 8 badges and beat the Elite Four. But there was always an element of that experience that didn't quite work for me. Growing up, I was really not that big of a traditional RPG fan, and I found that as I've aged, I've liked those games more and more, and I would now consider myself an RPG fan. But back then, that gameplay was just very difficult for me because I'm an impatient gamer. I like games that are very tactile, and, RPG is very much not that. So Pokemon Legends Arceus makes the game tactile while retaining those RPG elements by giving you the ability to throw the Pokeball. Just the mere kinetic feeling of throwing the Pokeball at the Pokemon and capturing it, it's what you dream of doing, right? You explore the world, you see a Pokemon, and then throwing the Pokeball is part of the process. It's so satisfying. This is the first Pokemon game where catching Pokemon is the entire concept. Yes, there's battling, yes, there's a narrative, but bottom line, even at the beginning of the game, it says, seek all Pokemon. You are out to catch them all. And I can say, proudly, that this is the first time in my entire lineage as a Pokemon fan where I caught them all. And not only did I catch them all, I filled out all of the research in the Pokedex. Because not only do you register the Pokemon to your Pokedex from catching it, but there's other activities you can do with the Pokemon to learn more about them and then fill out the dex more. And from a narrative standpoint, you will come from a future Pokemon world where people are familiar with Pokemon, they're friends with Pokemon, they're pets, they go on journeys together. But in the land of Hisui, which is in ancient Sinnoh, you discover that the people there are afraid of Pokemon. They are not friends with Pokemon. Pokemon are dangerous. They can hurt you. The trainer, you, can take damage from a Pokemon, which is cool. I hope they do that again in the future. And it's your job as the new person in the village to teach them that Pokemon are our friends, that we should love them, and, that they can be a member of that society. They're only going to hurt you if you give them a reason to. There are side quests in the game from the various villagers that will oftentimes involve a Pokemon that they are either afraid of, they don't know a lot about, or they just don't want around. One of the ones that sticks around in my mind is this old lady has a Chimecho that's hanging out in front of her house that she's just really not okay with. So you try and find various homes in the village that the Chimecho could potentially live in, until ultimately you go back to the old lady's house and suddenly she's just like, you know what? I kind of like the Chimecho hanging out here. He can stay here, that's fine. And as you do these side quests, more and more Pokemon will start populating the village. So you quite literally get to see the effects that you're having on these people because more Pokemon will start living in the village with them. And I think that's super cool. I love Pokemon Legends Arceus. It's my favorite Pokemon game of all time. I think I'm fairly comfortable saying. I really enjoyed Scarlet and Violet. They didn't quite hit the same highs for me, personally, but, if Pokemon Legends exists as its own series on the side, then I'm more than happy. So my last game of the year might be a little cliche. I don't know how many of the other guys are going to have this on their list. Maybe John, we'll see. My final game of the year is Elden Ring. Elden Ring is my first real FromSoft game. I had very little experience with Dark Souls in the past, and for those of you who know me, know that I love Monster Hunter, and Monster Hunter and FromSoft games are built on a very similar gameplay principle. This kind of wait-and-see approach to combat, this slower, more methodical design sense that comes from the combat. So naturally, right away, I latched on to the gameplay quite quickly. Elden Ring is also the first game that's released since Breath of the Wild that gave me the same feelings that Breath of the Wild did. It's almost as if like FromSoft looked at Breath of the Wild and said, yeah, we can do that. And they and then they did. There's a huge, vast open world. In very few cases will tell you you can't go somewhere. But more often than not, there's a way to get where you want to go. I mean, a lot of people in the very beginning of the game will open a chest in the opening area that then teleports you to a much different, more difficult area of the game, and that'll happen a lot in Elden Ring. There is always several ways to get somewhere, and I really like that. It encourages you to explore the world, look for things, go at your own pace, and that's all tied together with the difficulty of the series combat. You might be able to go somewhere, but there's going to be an enemy there that's going to literally eat you alive. And that's fun. I like being challenged like that. I love being able to say, I don't think I should be here, but I'm going to be here anyway. But more than that, I think Elden Ring was a great experience for me because of multiplayer. I know a lot of people like to play FromSoft games solo because there's a kind of badge of honor that I guess goes with it. I don't really see it that way. For me, it is more about the adventuring with another person. Just that shared experience is really fun. So me and a good friend of mine, Levi, you may have seen him on our Twitch channel, GVG. You may have seen him on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/officialgbg, shameless plug. And there was just something really fun about saying, hey, I see something over there. I don't know what that is. Do you want to go and check it out? And then we'd do that. You know, Elden Ring uses that same multiplayer system that the previous games use, where, you know, you have to summon someone into your world, and if they die, they have to be summoned back in. And that can get a little monotonous, but we found a way to really make that work. And we played almost the entirety of Elden Ring together, and I would not trade that experience for anything. I desperately want a future Breath of the Wild entry, maybe Tears of the Kingdom. They haven't said anything, so who knows at this point, but I desperately want another experience like that is multiplayer, that hits the same highs as Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild, because I think playing it with another person and exploring a fresh world that you've never been in before, it's magical. My friends and I will talk about the first 20, 30 hours of Breath of the Wild as being literally magic. And Elden Ring is the only other time in my entire history as a gamer that I've felt that way. Maybe Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time the first time I played both of those games, but nothing even comes close to Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild's world design for me. Just having the freedom to go somewhere, see something and say, oh, that's cool, I wonder what that is. Go there and then find out there was something cool there. Like, that's the big thing. You know, Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring use this concept where from every point of interest, you can see several other points of interest. And it's such a good design because oftentimes you will have a goal in mind, and this happened with Levi and I with Elden Ring quite a bit, is we had a goal in mind. Hey, there's a big castle over there, we're gonna go there, because that's a big castle and we wanna know what's inside that. But there would be other points of interest along the way, and we'd be able to see other points of interest from that point of interest, and we would just get so sidetracked that there could be several days in between us setting our goal to the big castle and actually getting there. And I love that experience, just because it's so, I think they call it, emergent gameplay? Your story can only be defined by you. You know, everybody's experience with the game is going to be very different, and I think that's super special. And, you know, that's not even talking about the amazing combat and just the world building of Elden Ring, if you're willing to dig deep enough to find all of that stuff. So don't take this as a person who's played a bunch of FromSoft games, because I haven't. I'm happy to say that I am a fan now, and I'm on board for whatever they do next. Haven't decided if I'll go back and play their previous entries yet, but if they're anything like this, you know, I think there's a good chance that'll happen. Well, that's it. Tell me what you thought in the comments below. Tell me what games you loved from 2022. 3 is not a huge list, so, you know, it was really hard for me to pick the 3 that I did. But if you have more than 3, feel free. Just let us know in the comments below. Make sure you watch the rest of the videos from the rest of the team as we head into the new year, and have yourself a very happy holidays and New Year, depending on when you watch this. And we will see you in 2023, where my most anticipated video game is Tears of the Kingdom. So, some of us have unique sign-offs, and I've been toying with one. If you know me from Break Room Arcade, I had the Don't Break Your Backs, Breaking the Games, but for now, Break Time's Over thing. And I'm like, what could I do that's similar to that for Good Vibes Gaming? Something that's kind of snappy, kind of corny. And I landed on one. I'm going to test it out on you before I say goodbye. That's all for now. We'll see you next time. Keep the games good and the vibes greater. Bye.